Picture this: a family of four, one tiny house, two kids who cannot stand sharing a room anymore. And somehow, this family is happier, calmer, and closer than they were in their old 3-bedroom house. The secret is not more square footage. It is 2 lofts, 1 smart layout, and a design trick most tiny house builders will not tell you about. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you will know exactly why the dual loft layout has become the single most requested design for tiny house families in 2026, and the one mistake that turns a dream layout into a daily headache. Before we get into it, if you are even thinking about a tiny house for your family, hit subscribe right now. We break down real floor plans, real costs, and real code requirements with zero sponsors and zero fluff, so you actually know what you are building before you build it. So let's define this properly, because a lot of videos throw the term around loosely. A dual loft tiny house is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of one sleeping loft above a small footprint, the home has 2 separate loft spaces, usually placed on opposite ends of the trailer or foundation, each with its own ceiling height, its own access point, and often its own window for light and air. The main floor underneath stays open for the kitchen, the living room, and the bathroom, while the 2 lofts handle sleeping. That single design choice changes almost everything about how a family actually lives in a small space. Builders like East Coast Tiny Homes in Australia are putting out dual loft models around 26 feet long, with 2 full sets of stairs, 1 for each loft, so nobody has to climb over anybody else at 11 at night. Kookaburra Tiny Homes build a similar concept called the Livability SE, just under 24 feet long, where the primary loft holds a double bed with a skylight and extra storage, and the second, smaller loft is bright, single bed-sized, and works as a kid's room, a guest space, or even a reading nook when it is not being slept in. That flexibility is the whole point. Here is the problem with a single loft tiny house when you have kids. Everyone sleeps in the same space. There is no door. There is no wall. There is no version of privacy once your child turns 8, 9, 10 years old and starts wanting their own little world. A single loft might work beautifully for a couple, but the moment you add even one more human who needs their own sleep schedule, their own space to decompress, or their own place to keep their stuff, that one loft becomes the bottleneck of the entire home. Split that sleeping space into 2 lofts, and you solve 3 problems at once. First, separation. Parents get an actual bedroom, kids get an actual bedroom, and everybody sleeps better because nobody is listening to anybody else breathe. Second, staggered bedtimes. If your 5-year-old goes down at 7:30 and you are still up at 10, you are not creeping around a shared loft trying not to wake them. Third, resale and rental flexibility. A 2-bedroom tiny house, even a genuinely tiny one, appeals to a completely different buyer or renter pool than a 1-bedroom. If you ever sell this thing or run it as a short-term rental, 2 separate sleeping lofts widens your market considerably. Now let's get specific, because 2 lofts can mean a few different things depending on how a designer lays it out, and the option you pick should match your family, not just what looks nice in a video. Option 1 is the opposite end layout. This is the most common dual loft configuration, and it is the one you see in most builder catalogs. One loft sits above the kitchen or bathroom near the front of the trailer. The other sits above the living area or entry near the back. This maximizes the physical distance between the 2 sleeping spaces, which is the best option if you want real acoustic separation between parents and kids. Option 2 is the stacked or split loft. Instead of 2 lofts at different ends, you get one wide loft area split down the middle by a half wall, a railing, or a step change in floor height. This works when your trailer or build is on the shorter side and you cannot physically fit 2 full separate loft volumes. It gives you 2 distinct zones without needing 2 separate staircases, but you do lose some of that acoustic privacy since there is often no full wall between the spaces. Option 3, and this is becoming more common in 2026 builds, is the twin bed loft for siblings. Instead of 1 loft for parents and 1 for a single child, both lofts are sized for kids, using bunk configurations or 2 twin beds in an L shape, while the parents sleep on a fold-out or Murphy bed on the main floor. This is a smart move for families who want the kids up and out of the main living zone, while parents keep flexibility on the ground floor for daytime use. Each of these has real trade-offs on things like ceiling height, insulation performance, and how much of a total square footage goes to circulation versus livable space. So this is not a one-size-fits-all decision, and any builder who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you their one standard model rather than the layout that actually fits your family. This is the section where most tiny house content skips completely, and it is exactly why families end up with lofts that look great on camera but fail inspection, or worse, are genuinely unsafe for kids. If you are building or buying in the United States, Appendix Q of the International Residential Code is the section that governs tiny house lofts specifically, and it lays out real, non-negotiable numbers. A loft used for sleeping needs a minimum floor area of 35 square feet, and it has to be at least 5 feet in any horizontal direction. So you cannot just carve out a triangle of leftover space and call a bedroom. Stairways accessing a loft need at least 17 inches of clear width above the handrail and 20 inches below it, with a minimum headroom of 6 feet 2 inches. If you're using a ladder instead of stairs, code has separate rung width and spacing requirements for that too. Guardrails matter enormously with kids in the picture. Appendix Q requires loft guards of at least 36 inches in height, or half the clear ceiling height, whichever is less, running along the open side of every loft. That is not a suggestion. That is the same basic safety logic that keeps a toddler from rolling off an open edge in the middle of the night. And then there is egress, which is honestly the single most overlooked issue in dual loft family homes. Every sleeping loft needs its own emergency escape and rescue opening, meaning a window or an egress-rated skylight your family can actually get out of in a fire. Code allows an egress roof skylight to count as that emergency exit in a loft, as long as the bottom of the opening sits no more than 44 inches above the loft floor, and the clear opening meets the minimum size requirement of 5.7 square feet. Here is the problem in the real world. A lot of budget dual loft builds put a small, fixed, non-opening skylight over each loft purely for daylight, not for egress, and families assume that skylight is their exit route in an emergency. It is not, unless it actually opens to that minimum clear area. If you're shopping for a dual loft tiny house, ask the builder directly whether each loft's window or skylight is egress rated in writing. Do not assume. This is the single most important question in this entire video. Let's talk real numbers, because dual loft layouts are not automatically more expensive, but they are not automatically cheaper either, and the marketing around this varies wildly by builder. Mid-sized dual loft models in the 24 to 26 foot range with 2 bedrooms are landing in the mid-$70,000 to over $100,000 range in 2026, depending on finish level, off-grid packages, and whether you're buying domestically or importing. East Coast Tiny Homes mid-size dual loft model starts around $85,000 before options. Kookaburra's Vanny SE starts around $72,000, with off-grid solar and battery packages adding to that. Custom builders like Nomad Tiny Homes in Texas price their dual loft 3 sleeping space layouts, including a loft master, a secondary loft, and a convertible sofa downstairs, on a project-by-project basis, which typically lands in a similar band once you factor in customization. The honest takeaway here is that 2 lofts do not automatically double your cost the way 2 bedrooms might in a conventional house, because you're still working within roughly the same footprint and roof structure. What actually drives the price up is the second staircase if you go that route instead of a ladder, the second egress-rated skylight or window, the extra framing needed for 2 separate loft floor structures, and any additional insulation and air sealing needed, since Appendix Q now requires tiny houses to meet a strict air leakage standard of no more than 0.3 cubic feet per minute per square foot of enclosure area. That is a real, testable number, not a marketing claim, and it matters more in a home with 2 loft volumes to seal properly. Beyond code and cost, there are livability details that separate a dual loft layout families actually love from one they regret within 6 months. The ceiling height in each loft matters more than people expect. Appendix Q allows reduced ceiling heights in lofts specifically because tiny houses could not otherwise fit under standard road transport height limits. But a loft with a true 5-foot peak height only near the center and dropping to nothing at the edges is going to feel like a coffin to an adult, even if a 5 or 6-year-old is perfectly happy in it. If the primary loft is for parents, push for as much peak height and as steep a roof pitch as your build allows. If a loft is strictly for younger kids, you have more flexibility to keep that loft lower and free up ceiling height elsewhere. Storage integrated into the staircase is one of the smartest moves in modern dual loft builds. Nomad's Escape model and several others route the staircase up to one loft through a wall of built-in storage niches, essentially turning wasted stair volume into your pantry, your closet, or your linen storage. If you're designing your own layout, this should be non-negotiable. A ladder gives you zero storage. A proper staircase, done right, can give you an entire second kitchen's worth of cabinetry. Sound separation is the detail almost nobody asks about until they're living with it. 2 open lofts on opposite ends of a home, with nothing but open air between them and the main floor, means every conversation downstairs is audible in both lofts. If privacy actually matters to your family, look at solid half walls, sliding panels, or even a simple curtain track around each loft opening. Not for looks, but so a parent can have a phone call after the kids are down without every word carrying straight up into a still-awake 10-year-old's loft. A tiny house from Build Tiny, called the Dance Model, puts this whole philosophy into practice for an actual family with young kids. The main loft holds a queen bed with a full height closet, and a narrow hallway connects it to the second loft, sized for a single or double bed, with enough room left over for play or study space, not just sleeping. The entire loft area is fitted with a gate and a metal safety barrier specifically because there are little ones in the house, which is exactly the kind of real-world safety layer that goes beyond minimum code and into what actually keeps a toddler safe at 2 in the morning. That is the pattern across almost every successful dual loft family build. The floor plan on paper looks similar to a dozen other tiny houses, but the difference between a home that works and one that gets listed for sale within a year comes down to these details. Egress that is actually functional, not just decorative. Guardrails and gates that go beyond the legal minimum when there are toddlers involved. Storage that earns its keep in every cubic foot of stair volume. And ceiling height allocated where the people who need it most actually sleep. Here is the mistake we promised you at the start. And it is the one thing that separates families who love their dual loft tiny house from families who regret it. It is not the size. It is not the cost. It is treating both lofts as permanently fixed, single-purpose bedrooms from day one, with no plan for how your family's needs will change. Kids grow. A 5-year-old who is thrilled to share a small loft with a sibling today may desperately want their own space in 3 years. A couple who built their second loft as a guest room might suddenly need it as a nursery. The families who are still happy in their dual loft tiny house 2, 3, 5 years later are the ones who built in flexibility from the start. A movable partition instead of fixed wall. A loft sized slightly bigger than the code minimum, so it can later fit bunk beds instead of one bed. A staircase, not a ladder, so that as kids get older and need to move independently at night, access stays safe and dignified rather than a nightly climbing challenge. If you're designing or buying a dual loft tiny house right now, ask yourself not just whether it fits your family today, but whether it can flex with your family in 5 years. That single question will save you from a single biggest regret we hear about from tiny house families. So that is the real, honest breakdown of the dual loft family layout. The good, the code requirements nobody mentions, the real 2026 pricing, and the one mistake that quietly wrecks this layout for families who do not plan ahead. If your family is considering going tiny, or you've already made the leap, tell us in the comments which loft configuration you would choose, opposite ends, split center, or twin bed loft for the kids, and why. If this helped you think through your own layout, subscribe for more honest, research-backed tiny house breakdowns with no sponsors and no affiliate links, ever. We will see you in the next one.